This is your first graduation address, so congratulations.
It is also probably the first time all year I've been nervous before class. I'm literally all morning, I'm like, what am I going to say, what am I going to say, et cetera, et cetera. Seriously, usually I think about what I'm going to teach about from roughly the time I leave that office until I get here. And that's only if someone else doesn't interrupt me and talks for a while first. But today is really a tough one because there's so many things I want to say. And clearly, it's tough enough to keep attention not when we're talking finance or I'm not talking finance. I mean, I can only imagine what Andrew's going to do over there. So, I guess I'm going to start off with say I don't know, and I think it drives people nuts. In many cases, in many other classes, I think when I'm saying I don't know in finance drives people nuts, but more often than not, the answer is I don't know. And that's what makes life so difficult, because I don't know what the right answer is most of the time. We think we know the answer. It's not like, and I hate to pick on accounting all the time, but it's not like accounting. When you do it and the left-hand side equals the right-hand side, and we're good, we know the answer. Or it's not like math, when it's provable, we can get an answer. What we're doing most of the time in finance, and most of the time in life, is trying to predict the future and trying to make decisions today that are influence a lot of things down the road. So, for instance, did you take the right job? I don't know. Right? I mean, might it might be the job you took, and many of you have jobs now, it may be the perfect job, it may be absolutely wonderful. On the other hand, it may be the worst job ever, and you may be set up for an absolute failure, and they only hired you because they wanted to make your life miserable. But you never know. So there's so much we don't know, and I think we see that in the arrogance or the hubris, or whatever you want to talk about, of people who believe they have the answers. And whether it's long-term capital management, when John Merriweather and Myron Scholes and those guys almost blew up the whole financial industry, or whether it's the people at Lehman Brothers, where they did the same thing, is when you're absolutely, totally convinced that one thing is right and all else is wrong, is when you get into the most trouble. So everything I'm going to say, keep that in mind, right? No matter what it is, you can always rest in, well, he doesn't know anything and he's wrong, and that's totally fine. And, it's usually right. That's the worst part of it. So, what I figured I was going to do, and I've done this in the past, it's worked real well. I haven't done the last couple of years, but is to do a review. And it's sort of late to do the review because we just gave you this test back, the test scores back on your major field exam. But to do a review, not just of finance, but a review of everything that you've done in the school business. So if you want to take a second and think back as freshmen when you came in and how scared you were, and or not scared, how scary you were in some cases. When Brandon almost killed me driving down the Constitution Avenue and driving off the side of the road, and life still passes before my eyes every time I go through that section. But to think of some of the classes you took, I'm not an expert in any of these, obviously. I mean, I've taken them as well, and that's about all I can say. But let's start with accounting. And accounting was probably one of the first business classes you took. And I think we learned a lot in accounting, and a lot of the stuff you learn in accounting still matters. And what I want you to do is to apply it not to companies, because that's boring. I mean, it's not boring, it's great, it's exciting, sin is wonderful, etc. But apply it to your life. So let's look at what did we learn in accounting? What things, without going into the syllabi and all that, what things did you learn in accounting? And one of the first things you probably learned was the balance sheet. And balance sheet is still one of the most important things. Last night I did a review for 610, the final capstone, not quite the capstone, but the final finance course at the MBA level. And in it, I started off talking about balance sheets. It is the most important thing for lots of different levels. So let's look at not a balance sheet of a company per se, but the balance sheet of you. What do you have on your own personal balance sheet? And to really think about this, we can go on and on. We have, friends. Those are an asset to you. Your health, that's an asset to you. Your happiness is an asset to you. Your family is an asset to you. Your knowledge. For most of you, that's an asset as well, right? One of the things I think of real fast this morning. Those are the main ones. Health, family, reputation is an asset. So all of these things are assets, And we have to remember that they're assets, and as we go through everything else, when we're talking finance at the end of the class today, we're going to make sure we make investments in those things. Make sure we keep those up to date. Make sure, if you have an asset, knowledge, for instance, and you take off this, it's a great asset right now. You just graduated from college, or will be in the next couple days or weeks, graduated from college, you have this wonderful asset. And if you don't keep investing in that, within a year, it's going to lose something. It's going to depreciate. Within 2 years, it depreciates a little more. Within 10 years, you're out of date. That knowledge is gone, right? So you have to keep these things up to date. And all of these, invest in your friends, invest in your health. How do you invest in your friends? You stay in touch. It's a really easy way, right? Now, life has gotten so much easier, right? The first time I taught this was pre-Facebook. It was sort of tough to keep in touch with people. But now it is so easy. I mean, but really do it. Don't just say you can do it. But that's nice and that's wonderful, and keeping in touch is a big step, but it's not the only step, right? Other things you have to do. I tell the story, and I always told the story, and I didn't really believe it. It was one of those things that you read and you hear people tell it and you don't believe it. I always said, if your friends, whoever they may be, get in trouble, if they have a problem, if their family, if their mother is sick, they call you 5 years, 10 years down the road and they say, hey, guess what, my mom's really, really sick. And I always said, what you do is you go. You drop whatever you do and you go. It doesn't matter, right? It's more important than anything else. I didn't believe it. I said it because I'd read it enough and I talked to people who could live through it. I didn't believe it until my mom got sick. And I absolutely, totally believe it. The people who came back to help me, I would do anything for them right now. So I would strongly suggest you do that. And whether it's they get in trouble at their jobs, whether their family is sick, whether whatever, you go and you help your friends. And that is one thing that Bonus does better than many other schools. So make sure you do that as well. It's not, it's not just, oh, gee, this is an asset that I can use in the sense of abuse. This is an asset that you want to take advantage of. That's something bad. You want to build that. You want to build on your asset. That's one of the strongest assets. Health is another one. I may be a little extreme on this, but I am convinced that you can't do anything in the world unless you stay at least somewhat healthy, right? If you are always sick, you're spending half your time, just forget the fact that you don't feel good. Let's literally take it from this perspective of cost and benefits. You have to go to the doctors all the time. It's not worth it. Stay healthy. It's really tough. Right now, you guys have more free time. I can't believe it. More free time than you will ever have in your life, right? After you begin working, life gets really busy, really, really fast. Find time for yourself. Find time to work out. Find whether it's yoga, whether it's running, whether it's basketball, whatever. Find some time for something that you like to do and that keeps you physically active. A piece of advice that works for me, and you can throw it out if you don't want it, don't let yourself go home before you work out. Because if you go home after a long day at work, you're not going back out. And you're just going to sit down in front of the TV, and you'll be amazed at how many shows are on that are just fascinating that you have to watch. Right? So just don't fall prey. Just drive, find a gym that you can stop between work and home and stop on the way home and get it. Even if it's only 20 minutes of workout or whatever, it'll make you feel infinitely better. From a perspective of, there have been some really stressful days. I know it's hard to believe in my job, there's stressful days, but there are. And I don't know how I would have made it through some of them if it weren't for gyms. Just going, you walk in, you feel absolutely miserable, and 40 minutes later you walk out feeling like a new person. So highly recommend making sure you watch your health. Happiness, all of these, we're going to talk about all of these again as we go through the day. Obviously, reputation is right now one of your biggest assets, and make sure you keep that at all. We talked about brand, right? A few minutes ago, I was mentioning out there the BSIM, the new, what is it, the Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management. And I'm all worried from a brand perspective that's BSIM is too close to SIM. And I'm already campaigning for them to change the name of it because I don't want them to infringe on our brand. Right? You all have a brand. I'm not going to go into the degree at JNC and they talk about it all the time. But you do have a brand. You do have a reputation. Guard it, right? Protect it. Make sure you do the right things. Make sure be absolutely, for those of you who are friends of mine on Facebook, you know I like Facebook an awful lot. But you do guard what you put out there, right? you don't put pictures of yourself drinking or smoking or whatever else. Make sure that people do look at that stuff, and it does matter. So protect your assets. Watch your liabilities, and we will come back to liabilities when we get to the finance side. But watch your liabilities, whether it's actual debt or other things. Make sure you watch that. So the next class you probably took was stats, and stats. I love stats, but I to this day I joke that life is a multi-regression equation, right? Where you're trying to adjust all of these different things, and you have some things you don't like to do, negative coefficients, some things that are positive coefficients, and it's a multi-regression equation. We're making decisions on things we don't know in the future. I could go on. I'm not going to just because I'm looking at the time and I'm getting a little worried already. Management was, I'm guessing, one of the next classes you took. Management is 2 schools of thought, and I should preface this. I was a management major, so I am biased towards this. I taught my first 2 years here. I taught management, so I am really biased. I think this is an important area. Won't say anymore, okay? But I do think it's a really important area, and there's 2 types of management classes that you want to think about. One I'm going to just collectively call leadership classes. You know, organizational behavior, things like that, that teach you, or at least point out leadership. Everyone can be a leader, and everyone should be a leader, right? Body Response is constantly looking for leaders. Every organization in the world needs leaders, whether it's volunteer, whether it's a company, whether it's a sports team. People need leaders. There's an awful lot of followers. People would rather sit there and not do anything. It doesn't take an awful lot to be a leader, but try to be leaders wherever you can. The other type of management science, I guess I'll call it management science. This is, the efficiency. This is the Frederick Taylor School, if you think of it. You guys do Frederick Taylor in class? Management, yeah. So, what did he do? Constantly was looking for better ways to organize, more efficient ways. Can we adjust this, this assembly line and make it a little better if we want? Be efficient. Be efficient. It matters a lot. Life is, we have a very limited resource of time, and you want to get as much done as you possibly can. Whether it's having fun, whether it's work, whatever, you have to be efficient. And that's the thing I would take out of the Frederick Taylor School of Actual Management Science. Within this, also, we have, obviously linear programming. I don't know how much you guys do linear programming as undergrads. Do you do much? Any? A little? So, okay. Linear programming, think of it as a controlled maximization problem. So, a constraint maximization problem, where you're trying to maximize your own utility, but you have limited time, you have limited money, you have other obligations, you have whatever, health issues, you name it. You're trying to maximize your utility based off of a whole slew of other things. Probably after that, I wasn't sure. The next course you took probably is BIS, I think. Most many of you. Yes. The answer to this is yes. You have to be. You're not going to throw technology information systems altogether. Whether or not you know what the name of the fastest processor out right now is irrelevant. I don't care. But you do have to know how to use these things. And most of you do. I'm not, but be really good at it. If you talk to people on Wall Street, if you talk to people in Chicago, the one thing that they say we should do more, one of the things that we should do more, one is accounting. But the second one is teach spreadsheet skills more. We should spend more time looking at spreadsheets and working through spreadsheets because you will spend a lot of time doing spreadsheets. But I don't know what you're going to do. So whether it's spreadsheets or whether it's blogging or whether it's whatever, stay current in whatever the newest technology of the day is. That's a big one. And if you do stay current at your company, you will get a reputation very quickly for staying current, and people will then start coming to you asking for advice, and then you become more and more valuable to that company, that organization, or whatever the case may be. Economics was the next one I was assuming most people were taking on this point. In economics, life is, finance, which is the most important of all classes, just applied economics. Everything boils down to economics, I think. When we're looking at economics, we have a scarce resource, time. And we're trying to allocate that scarce resource into many, many different areas. We learned that things at the margins matter, right? At the margins matter. It wasn't averages, it was right now, we're looking at cost-benefit analysis. And we're trying to do whatever cost-benefit analysis. Trying to invest in positive net present value projects. There's macro and there's micro. My personal favorite is micro. I think micro is more relevant for most of the things that we talk about in here and probably in life. Macro, there's so much uncertainty at macro levels that when something changes, I'm a little less of a fan there. Other things in economics, the whole idea of specialization. Specialization is key. I mean, we can't know it all. We cannot. It's impossible. We have to specialize in something, whether it's accounting, finance, whether it's within dividends, whether it's tax policy, whatever. We have to specialize in something. So be specialized. Be special, right? Be specialized in some area. However, and this is the thing that I don't think we stress enough, life changes so quickly. We see so many times the things, the best whatever person, whoever it is no longer needed because technology has changed or because businesses have changed or whatever. So while specialized, also, and I'm going to bring this into finance again, but also be diversified. Diversified specialization again. You want to know at least something else. Specialize in one area, don't get me wrong, but know something about these other areas as well. So don't be so focused that you lose everything else. Marketing. I have a tough time describing marketing. I don't know what it is. Marketing is making things known. Marketing is networking. Marketing is product placement, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking, literally, just 20 minutes ago, driving down here, 30 minutes ago, driving down here, and networking came to mind very quickly here. There were two things. Who's William Dawes? I think anyone would remember William Dawes. Samuel Prescott. It's real quick.
Was William Dawes the guy, the other guy from Paul Revere?
Yeah, exactly. Most people don't remember that, but they remember Paul Revere. Right? Paul Revere was more successful in getting the word out because he had a stronger network. He developed that network, and his marketing was word of mouth, one to another. It wasn't forcing it down everyone's throats, from out yelling at the top of his lungs. Marketing is about networking. Bonaventure has one of the best alumni networks I've ever seen. Use it. Get involved with it. When you're looking for jobs now, get involved with it. When you're 5 years, 10 years out, and you have a job, help others come along through that network. And that is one part of marketing of it. Another part is clearly just being able to communicate, be able to tell a story, be able to talk. You guys, as a society, I think, or as a what do you want to call it? As a finance major, you've gotten a lot better. All finance majors, I think, have gotten a lot better at presentations. When I first came here, it was very normal for people to stand with index cards or something reading it. And after, a 2-letter deduction, people learn pretty quickly that that's not something they do in my classes. But literally yesterday, in 610, a non-finance major had no cards up there. And I had forgotten to say it was an automatic 2-letter deduction, so I just said, put those down. You don't want to use those. But that said, I mean, you have to know your material. You have to be able to talk most of the time without it. And you could be the best at whatever you're doing, but if you can't communicate that to others, it doesn't matter. And you have to communicate that in a way that they can handle it. Think of basketball. If you're the point guard, right? You don't always give something to the ball. You don't give the ball to the center. Even if the center may be open, it is 90 feet from the basket, right? You have to communicate the message when the person is ready to receive it and in a way that they can handle it. It may not be a bounce pass. It may be a toss or toss off. Anyway, so we have to think marketing. Marketing is important in lots of different ways. And that is going to lead us to finance. And finance will take up a lot. So what did we learn in finance? I don't even know where to begin here. Some of the things I wrote down for finance. Time value of money, maximum contracts, run behavior, ethics, risk management, investments, behavioral finance, capital structure. Think long term, and debacles. So I guess we'll start off with what we know and what we don't know. Markets are pretty tough to do. Are they perfect? No. Sim proves that. I mean, there's lots of things that prove that they're not perfect. But are they tough to beat? Yes. And within that, if you like to do it, fine. Pick your stocks all day long. This is personal finance for a second. I'm not talking business-wise. Personal finance. If you want to pick your own stocks, that's wonderful and great. But realize you're getting utility from picking the stocks. Your return probably is not going to be any higher than anyone else. Numbers to remember. 12, 9, 6. What are those numbers? We talked about them a lot at 4 and 1. Average return from S&P 500, 12%. Average return from mutual funds, 9%. Average investor return, 6. Why? We time things wrong. We buy at the top. We sell at the bottom. We panic. We get out of it. Behavioral finance matters. We remember that. And we tend to do it anyways. Transaction costs matter. Oh, one more thing about this. Markets are tough to beat. Product markets are easier to beat than financial markets. So if you have a limited amount of time, worry about, if you want to beat the market, worry about other parts of the market. Worry about something you're going to sell. Operations trump finance most of the time. So you come up with a good product. Actually, there's a funny story there. I look for inefficiencies. I look for transaction costs. A friend of mine at Rochester, I may have told this story. His name was Nick Kellogg. So, Nick, if you're out there, any idea? I've lost total contact with him. I tried everybody. He's not on Facebook. I tried. So, Nick was a good friend of mine. He went to Penn State. I met him at Rochester. And we studied together. We ran together. And just before finals, he disappeared. Just like disappeared. During finals week, he disappeared. Where did he go? So, finally get hold of him. And he's studying over in the accounting library. So just for the record, we never studied in a business library. I don't know why. I think it wasn't as close to us where our houses were. We tended to study in chemistry library because we're nearby and it was clean and all that. So we studied in the chemistry library all the time. He was gone. He went on the other side of campus and was studying the accounting library. And the obvious reason is he wanted to stay with me. Made sense. But there was another reason as well, right? Like, what were you doing over there? Why did you want to waste all your time on? Because, I understand markets are efficient, and I also understand that he was getting a job on Wall Street starting almost immediately after graduation. And I also realized I'm not going to have as much time on my hands as I can do right now. So I decided to look where there were inefficiencies. And I concluded that the inefficiencies existed on the tax side of the world. I might not be able to beat the market, but I might be able to beat the IRS. So what he was doing, even though we weren't in a tax class, he was studying tax law, trying to figure out ways to find, a positive net present value that was legal. He wasn't trying to be illegal, but find ways around paying high taxes. Transaction costs matter, taxes matter. Trading eats up. I mean, we saw Barbara O'Dane paper. The more we trade, the lower our returns are. So don't trade a lot, less. You like it. And if you like it, you realize that you're paying for it. And the cost you're paying for is going to be lower returns almost all the time. And those returns may not seem like a lot, but think about the football example we use all the time in the fall. So if you're kicking a field goal, and if you're kicking it here, it's easy. If you're kicking from way back here, and you have a long-term horizon, even if you're off by just a little, you're going to miss by quite a bit. That matters. So if you're just giving up a couple of that's crazy. But if you're tying the market by paying 3% in transaction costs, 3% transaction costs, you're going to miss your goals by quite a bit. So be careful with that. You're better to play it safe, watch transaction costs, and think long term. Think long term is a big one. This means lots of things. This means have low discount rates. Okay? The highest discount rate in the world, I mean, if you want to think about it, the highest possible discount rate are drug addicts. They're willing to say, I want the benefit right now, Because I don't care about the consequences down the road, but I want that benefit right now, that hit, that whatever, right this second. So they have really high transaction costs. I'm sorry, really high discount rates. Have a low discount rate. Think long term. I will give you it's wrong, and it's absolutely wrong, but I'll give you a little mental game that I play with myself. And I always thought it was wrong, and I always thought, what did idiots do this? Until I was reading a book, and I found out that Warren Buffett plays the exact same game, right? So when you buy something, whatever it's be, think about, well, it's not how much it costs. You know, you're comparing two things. One's going to cost $5,000, one's going to cost $7,000, let's say. So there's a $2,000 difference. Don't think of it as a $2,000 difference. Think of it how much that $2,000 will grow over 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years. And all of a sudden you find out that you really can cut costs pretty good up front, and it tends to work remarkably well. Other things here. Nexus of contracts. Everyone has a nexus of contracts. There are a lot of people who count on you. There's a lot of people who depend on you. You depend on a lot of other people. We don't label them bondholders and shareholders. We label them friends and family and loved ones and just interested parties or whatever you want to think of them as. But realize that they exist. And realize, as we started the year off thinking, we have to have win-win relationships. And in free trade and anything else, we have to have win-win relationships or the other side wins. And that's true whether it's a personal relationship, that's true whatever. You want to make sure you're looking out for everyone else in this. In this area, ethics clearly comes to play. And if you get the reputation of not being ethical, it really can hurt. Now, can we make up for it if we have a slip? Of course. And everywhere in the world, there is not a single person on the face of this earth who hasn't made a mistake at some level. I am reading right now, I am Malawa, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Does everyone know who Malawa is? If you don't, you should. Someone's got to know this.
Is that just Middle East?
Pakistan, sort of Middle East.
So the girl that got attacked by terrorists around the school?
Yes, she was 15 at the time. She got shot by the Taliban for going to school. And honestly, I don't know if I can give a higher recommendation, but it is an awfully good one. Awfully good one. Malala. And yes, she was attacked, and I mean, here she is. She was the youngest person ever put up for the Nobel Prize. Just an amazing person. Like, almost too good to be true. I can't imagine. But she was just telling the story. One of the early chapters, she tells the story of stealing and how she stole all this stuff from her good friend. So if you do make a mistake, and everyone does, you can't redo it, right? Don't think it's the end of the world, but realize that it's harder to recover than it is not to make a mistake in the first place. So watch ethics. It happens to all the best of us. There was a former student of mine. Last night we were doing, or yesterday afternoon, I guess, we were doing case studies, and we were looking at Ponzi schemes. You know what Ponzi schemes are, right? Remember? And the Bonaventure grad, 29-year-old now, Bonaventure grad, is awaiting trial for running a Ponzi scheme. Finance major, person we visited on several finance trips to New York City, and is now awaiting trial. It happens to everyone. It doesn't mean it's right, it's wrong, but people make mistakes, and everyone does it. So everyone makes mistakes, but watch this. This is a really, really big one. Risk management, we learn in finance. And risk management, the risks are many and varied. It can be obsolescence, it can be health issues, it can be the company that you wanted to work for goes out of business, it can be a global financial meltdown just when you come out and you think you're getting a job and all of this. There's lots of things that can go wrong. I love the idea of Nassim Taleb and Anti-Fragile, that we have to protect the downside almost at any cost. Right? You don't try to optimize everything. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. And you don't think this is the only way. If it doesn't work, then you screw. Right? So, diversification on multiple levels. We talked about it in investments, but also think about it in this terms of your job or your life or whatever. Make sure you don't just know one thing. It's actually fascinating because when you look at breakthroughs in any field, be it sciences or any field you want to look at, the breakthroughs always come from the outside. The big jumps, because in that all we're doing is these little bit incremental moves, but the big jumps come from the outside. That's why I'm constantly pushing everyone who will ask, or anyone who asks me, and myself as well, to read outside the field. Right? I read as many science books as I do business books. Why? Because you never know how they're going to help you. And I truly, truly believe that you have to be anti-fragile. You can't be so tied in. You have to be flexible. And flexible in the sense of yoga, but also flexible in the sense of being able to adjust when things change, when things go wrong, and not to have all so tied in that if that goes wrong, your whole system falls apart. Behavioral finance. We all at times act irrationally. And we like to fit in, and we like to, we anchor ourselves. Anchoring is when we tell ourselves a story, we become so transfixed with that story that we can't see anything else. We all are faced with so many problems and so much busyness that we don't see things. I'm sure we remember the gorilla video. What was the gorilla video? They were passing a basketball back and forth, and all of a sudden a gorilla walks through the room, and most people do not even see the gorilla, right? It's a lesson we learn from behavioral finance. It's not necessarily behavioral finance, but the idea is very true. Don't get so tied up with day-to-day jobs that you miss the big picture. Keep looking around. Understand, your job is not to make the company $1 zillion and that's it, right? At some level, your job is to live a happy life. And if you have a job that is so miserable that you don't like getting up every morning, you shouldn't be doing it. I don't care what the price is. A story I can tell the easiest. I had a friend, I didn't really have a friend, I lied. I had an acquaintance, person I knew, at Penn State. He was a couple years older than me. He graduated, and he got a PhD, went to Wall Street, was working on Wall Street. And I don't know for a fact what he was making. I have to preface this. I do not know. I heard it was upwards of $500,000 before bonuses. So with bonus, you got to figure over $1 million. Don't know that for a fact. And I hadn't really seen him. He left. Didn't really think, too bad. Didn't think I was really going to ever see him again. At a finance conference one year, I ran into him. Like, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I'm looking for a job. Oh, I'm sorry. He goes, no, don't be sorry. I quit. I want to quit. I'm like, wait, why? What things would lead you to drop at least a 0.5 or something, at least a 0 off your the end of your salary? What would make you do that? And he goes, I'm not happy anymore. It's just not worth it. That year, the same year, Tony Annunziato came in here and talked. And, whatever it was, over in Murphy. And talked. And there he said that every day you get up, if you're not happy, you have a job. I've never worked a day in my life. It's fun. It's play. And I totally think that's what you should try to find. Find something, whatever it is. I hope it's in finance. I would love to be in finance. Some of you may be an accountant. But I really can't be happy. But find something that you like to do and do it. I say only a little in jest that if I were to win the lottery tomorrow, and it would be something because I don't play the lottery, but if I were to win the lottery tomorrow, I doubt my life would change a whole lot. I might be able to buy more solar systems for Haiti, and I might. Well, no, I would never, ever, ever go to another factory. That is true. But besides that, you don't understand me. Try to imagine a factory. Think around. Enough said. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's fun. I like teaching. I like running modern response. Would I love to have an assistant? Absolutely. There's no question. Would I like someone to clean my office? Yes, go for it. But by and large, it's fun, and it's not about money. I would recommend all of you, if you don't, just remember the drive video we saw at the end of the week. I think we saw it at the end of 401. If you don't remember, go watch it again. It's a good one. It talks about that, you know, that having a purpose to get up in the morning is much more important than the amount of money you're getting. And whether it's, again, $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, at what point is too much or is not too much? Is what money, at what point is money enough? And I don't know where it is. But we saw this year, how many people that, you know, whether it's Regus, whether it was the people at Enron, whether it was, I mean, whoever, that were making millions and millions of dollars, it was never enough. They had to cheat the system to get just much more. Why? Right? It just doesn't, it doesn't add up to me. It might to others. It doesn't add up to me at all. Capital structure. If there's one method, or one message that you should remember from capital structure, is that debt makes good times great and bad times horrible. And that is absolutely true at the personal level as well as the business level. So if you graduate and you already have quite a bit of college debt, student loans, and then you go out and you max out a credit card, and then all of a sudden you lose your job, bad just got really bad or horrible. So watch your debt, pay off your debt. Now, I should stress that some of these things fit together reasonably well. I mean, they fit together with them. For instance, regularly, probably, I'm guessing the two calls I get more than anyone else or anything else for financial advice are, should I buy a house? That's number one. And the answer is, I don't know. Yes, true, I don't know. And second is, should I pay off student loans or should I invest in the market? Okay, now I can tell you that from a purely statistical perspective, economics says you should most likely invest in the stock market and pay off your student loans at a low, because they're a lower rate and all of this. Right? I understand it completely. And yet, what would I probably do? The opposite. Right? Same with home loans. Home loans, I have a mortgage, right? Why would I pay off? Why would you ever pay off a mortgage early? Stupid. Why is it stupid? It's just a common perspective. It's deductible. Interest is deductible. So if it's already a low rate, I don't know, say 4%, say 5, make that easy. It's 5%, and it's deductible interest, now you're talking 2.5%, 3%. Why would you ever pay it off? It doesn't make any sense. Keep your money invested in the market. Expected return in the market is 12%. Do it. Right? And yet, whenever I have a little extra money, what do I tend to do? Pay off the mortgage. Why? I don't know. I don't know. And it feels good? Yeah. Right? It does feel good. It feels like I don't have that hanging. And I hate to say hanging over my head, because really I don't think about it more than once a year. But the idea that you get it paid off, you feel good about it, and even though it doesn't necessarily fit strictly with traditional finance, that's usually my advice to people. Pay off your debts early. Investments. And this gets back to what we started off the day with. Investing in lots of things. Investing for retirement, clearly. Save early, save often. Let time value money work for you. I hope you remember the homework assignment, which was not for me. I didn't want to correct it, right? But remember the problem where if you save money for 10 years versus if you waited 30 years and how much you had to save, it's different. Do it, right? Start putting money aside easy, early. It is so difficult to write yourself a check, to make that, you know, if you are the residual claimant in this world, where you decide at the end of the month, oh, I have this much left, I'm going to invest this much, then this much will always be approximately zero. Because if you have a pile of cash, Jensen's free cash flow, we learned the lessons early, you will spend that cash. You will find things to spend it. Whether it's a fancier car, whether it's a fancier house, whether it's trips to Fredonia, whether it's whatever. Hypothetically. Yeah, it's all hypothetical. You will find ways to spend money. So what should you do? Realize that. Realize it's a behavioral story. And the very first video we ever saw in behavioral finance, Dan Real, what did Dan say? By the way, it's his birthday today. No, his brother was there. What do you do? Have it taken over automatically. Put it on autopilot. Don't, and the idea Dan said was that we want to develop systems that solve our behavioral biases. Like, we can't jump up 10 feet in the air. So what do? We have steps. We can't see all the time. So what do? We have binoculars or glasses, right? We can't do a lot of things physically. We understand our physical limitations. We don't understand our mental limitations. Realize this is a mental limitation. That you will spend as much money as I give you, or as much money as anyone else gives you, if you have that opportunity. So put things on autopilot, and guess what? Once you do that, you don't miss the money. I've never once thought, oh man, I wish I had that money that I didn't. You don't think about it. You literally don't think about it. First day, at every job I've ever taken, granted, there's a ton. Given that I've been here most of the time, I don't know. But the first day, I've always said, you fill out the paperwork, and they say, well, how much do you want to put aside each month? And I said the maximum, whatever, and literally I wrote the maximum allowed by law. Put that in, and every single time, it doesn't happen much here, but if you do get a raise, the maximum, it's almost funny. But anyway, it goes up. It's just, it automatically, you don't think about it, and it's gone, and you don't miss it, and it's automatically just builds and builds and builds. And if there were one retirement piece of advice, that's what it would be. The second would be taxes matter. And however you decide, whether it's 401k, Roth IRA, whatever, 429, whatever they think, however you decide, look for tax advantage accounts. Try to minimize your taxes. Taxes take a big bite, and they really do. And you don't want frequent trading. Frequent trading drives up the returns, drives up the realized returns, which then drive up taxes. I'm not going to say, never do anything illegal to avoid taxes. But it's not saying you have to write the biggest check you possibly can each year either. And really try to watch that. Other things in finance. REM behavior. I guess I never did this one. People are REMs. Everyone's REM. I'm a REM. You're a REM. You're out to. What does REM stand for? Just remember? Resourceful, evaluative. What's the M? Oh, I'm so glad you were final for a couple days from now. I don't remember that. What is it? Maximizers. Yeah. So what does that mean?
Seeking your own best interest.
Seeking your own best interest. You're out to make yourself happy, right? You're trying to maximize your own utility. Now, I have to stress that many times it doesn't look like some people do that, right? But realize we all have different utility functions. And it's not just maximizing your utility. I can easily develop a scenario where your utility influences my utility. And we see that in neuroscience. We see oxytocin, which we talked a lot about in the behavioral area. But what was oxytocin? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's like a natural drug that like gets your body. It's like.
Yeah, and Paul Jackson is a neurotransmitter that makes us feel good. What's the easiest way to increase oxytocin? Okay, besides, I was looking at Brandon, I got really scared. No, that's not oxytocin. Those are endorphins and serotonin, so that's oxytocin. Go back to Pete. You're in the last book. Yeah, right? Do something good for someone else. So it's very easy to imagine a world where these two are connected. That maximizing your own utility is not the only thing that we're looking for. So those were some of the classes that I looked at that I thought you had. And then I think we should end with a case study. And the case study, what do you mean? I'm not going to pick on any of you, I'll pick on myself here. So, when I got out, I never imagined, never in a million years imagined about science. Never. I'd never done any of it. I never been on a trip, never used a chainsaw. I painted, okay, but other than that, never done any of that stuff. idea is you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea where your life is going to go. We've seen the numbers, right? You all know the numbers. The number of times you change jobs over the course of a career has gone up exponentially. It used to be you get a job, you stay there for your time. You don't do it anymore, right? Most people change jobs every couple of years. That matters a lot, right? But the biggest thing is find something you like to do and be happy with it. Make friends, keep friends, invest in friends, invest in your health, keep learning. They call graduation the commencement address, right? The commencement ceremony. Commencement is what? What's the word means? Start, right? It's not end, it's the start. And when you go, you have the knowledge that you learned at Bonds. So I do think I have to put in a commercial with Bonds at this point, right? There are classes, I understand, that are not necessarily very rigorous, and they're not necessarily, you may not even get anything else in the open. I understand that completely. I went here as well, and there were blow-up courses then as well. And I remember sitting in some of them and then doodling and reading. There was one class, and I won't say who, but there was one class, I literally learned more in that class than any other class I've ever taken up to that point. Not one single thing was from the teacher. I couldn't understand the word the teacher said at all. He's no longer here, by the way. Couldn't understand the word he said. I literally sat in the back of the class every day, read the Wall Street Journal, front to back, completely, every Tuesday, Thursday. And I was convinced I learned more doing that than any other class I ever been. But it forced me and gave me, how often do you have an hour and 15 minutes twice a week? Right? It was absolute reason. Literally reading what's in it. With all of that said, joking aside, I am convinced that you earned a very good education, and especially if you wanted to. If you wanted to, you'd be the best education here anywhere. When I go to conferences, I am amazed at how much better our classes are than at many, many, many other schools. Not just small schools, and big schools. The things that we learn, the things that they taught are so antiquated. It's just like I shiver when I hear them. I'm like, you teach that still? That's so wrong. Why do you even waste your time doing that? So the things that you learn are good. When you go out on the street, the door will not automatically open for you because you're about a bencher. Most people do not know about a bencher. Sorry, it's fact of life. Many do, but not everyone. You may have to knock at a few more doors. You may have to send out a few more resumes. You may have to, network a little harder. You may have to do any of a million things to get that first job. But once you get it, it doesn't matter anymore what the degree says. It doesn't matter if it's St. Bonaventure or Harvard or anyone else, right? You will show that you work and you will show that you know the stuff very, very quickly. And I am convinced of that, beyond any doubt. Again, case study me. I graduated here very quickly. I went up to the University of Rochester. That summer, I went up to the University of Rochester. The first session, whatever it was, the very summer thing, first session, got thrown into a study group. I think I told you guys this, with someone from Harvard, Ithaca, Stanford, Michigan. I can't remember where else. Some other smaller school. But anyways, those 6 of us were in a study group, and I was 100% convinced after day 2 that I was more prepared than any of them for what we were doing. And University of Rochester is one of the best finance schools in the country, and I was totally convinced that I knew more than any of these other people did. Now, when we went into a meeting or anything, they all said, "Oh, you're from Michigan," or "You're from Harvard." No one ever said, "Oh, you're from St. Bonaventure." But by the end, it was all like they didn't care at all. And I'm convinced that's the case. I'm convinced also that whether or not you know finance yet, you will. Okay? We talk about mailboxes. Remember my mailbox experience? I told you guys about that early in 401. I was running a cross-country team, and I was a management major, as I said. I went and whatever it was, I guess junior year, I decided, wow, I took my first finance course, first semester's junior year, and I loved it. And it was like incredible. And I decided I wanted to be a finance major. So I picked up a major starting at the end of my junior year. And And you think about it, you have to do a lot of classes in that short window. But it was okay, because I could memorize things. I have a really good memory, and I can memorize. The teacher said something, I can regurgitate it back with the best of them. And that's what I did. I just regurgitated the stuff back to them for a bit. And then all of a sudden, we had a case study in 402. It was same course. And I loved presenting, just loved presenting. And every opportunity, in fact, I remember this completely. There was a swimmer here named Luis, and here's from Nicaragua. And the two of us would fight. We were on the same group, same, whatever, club, team, whatever it is, same presenters. And we would argue every time. Does anyone else want to do a presentation this week? Yes. And the two of us would present every week, it seemed like. And it was still, it's fun. I don't know what you guys think. I really like talking in front of audience. And in one of them, I didn't understand it. It was a company that was growing. I think it was Dell. I can't remember right. The company was growing quickly, and it needed cash. And I always thought, well, if the company's growing, why does it need cash? And then it dawned on me, on a run, before the presentation, that afternoon the presentation was, I went up for my morning run, and I literally stopped at a mailbox. And at that point, it all clicked. Every bit of finance from that second on, I never been like, that doesn't make any sense. It all clicked at that one point. Whether you got that mailbox experience this semester, this year, these 4 years, I hope you did. But if you didn't, don't give up on it. Right? Stick with it. I am sure you are all smart enough to understand finance. I am positive of it. You are all smart enough to get it and to really understand, not to memorize it. Memorizing only goes so far. Memorizing is boring. And if it's only memorizing, guess what? You're replaced by a computer right now. Interpretation, that is what matters. Understanding how things fit together. Understanding the network. That's the stuff that computers can't do. That's the stuff that you can do. And make sure you remember that when you go out. The other final thing, and I guess I'm glad you got it over early, I wasn't planning it, but the other thing I think, in my perspective, that really works, and I learned this in grocery stores. I grew up in grocery stores, and I had every intent. I literally, when I graduated at Rochester, I remember we had to do a 5-year plan. And the 5-year plan was what we thought we'd be doing in the next 5 years. And I wrote, I'll be managing partner shops, and that was what I totally convinced I was going to do. One of the things you learn there is marketing that service doesn't end when they buy the product, right? Service matters, and you buy something and they can return it, or there's a warranty or whatever. I think that's an important thing that I forgot to mention as well, that your education isn't done, and I hope your education, even with me, isn't done. I would encourage you at some point, get back in touch with me. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's following the blog, whether it's following my Twitter account, Finance Professor on Facebook, or whatever, your learning is not done. I cannot stress that enough. You're learning. There was a saying. It's a saying in Pakistan actually. A half doctor is very dangerous. Right? You just know enough to be dangerous right now. You know enough about finance that, options, or derivatives, or whatever. But realize that's not, you have to think how things fit together. And that's the stuff that doesn't come immediately. It will come. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying for a second you guys aren't smart enough to do it, because you all are. But don't think you've had the experience yet to do it. And you guys have a leg up on me by far. When I graduated, I had finance compacted into basically a year and a quarter or a year and a half, and we didn't have SIP then. So you guys have had a lot more experience than I did when I graduated. But always be thinking of ways to do things better. It's just finance. I mean, life is, in the end, finance. And finance is cost-benefit analysis. Finance is weighing the risks and returns. Every decision you make, whether it's driving down the road, whether it's whatever, who you marry, what job you take, you're weighing costs and benefits. And that's what we do in finance. And that's why I think it's such an important topic. So thank you for a good semester. Thank you for a good multiple years for many of you. I'm going to miss you guys, especially the people I've had in SIM for 3-4 years now. I really did enjoy it. I hope you guys did. I hope you guys stay in touch. I hope in the future, many of you are doing Friday forums here and coming back and being on our board and all of those other good things. Founder Responds, I have to throw in a commercial. It's sort of by contract. Remember, Bond Response is open to everyone. So whether you're an alum, whether you're whatever, your family wants to come with us, always looking for help. So get involved in something, make a difference. Be a positive difference. The whole EVA, long before Bond Response started, when I went to bed every night thinking was, how can I make a difference? And I swear to God, it's true. How can I make a positive difference in the world? Whether it's through teaching, whether it's through making a better stuff down at the parking shop, whatever. Do the same thing. Think of ways you can make the world better. There are so many people in the world with so many problems. Everyone has a problem. Whether it's, me, you, and many of you in this class have come to me at some point over this last year and said, my, fill in the blank. Cousin, father, sister, someone died, is sick, etc. We all have problems. Realize that. And try to make the world a little better. It might just be reaching out and saying, hey, you okay? It might be, last night I heard a tough story in town. And, it might just be stopping over and saying, hey, is there anything I can do for you? It doesn't need to be curing AIDS. It's great if you do. But it doesn't need to be the world's biggest issue. It can just be something simple. It can be as simple as giving someone a blanket. It can be as simple as showing up after a disaster. Calling someone and saying, hey, I'm here for you if you need it, right? You guys do that better than Bonus does that better than any place I know. You guys are now going to go out and do that better than anyone I know. So, good luck, thank you, and if there's anything I can do for you, just help.